In Batman Arkham Asylum, you have access to a mechanic called Detective Mode. You press a button and your vision is augmented. Notable parts of the environment now stand out against a monochromatic background. Enemies are highlighted as well, even through walls. Detective Mode was a neat little mechanic that fit the game, considering Bruce Wayne is a character with more money than sense. Of course he'd have some tech that allows him to track his targets from anywhere. This system is perfect for a Batman game. And then you started seeing it everywhere. Games were stealing the system outright, and some even did their own little spin on it, but it was all in service of the same thing: highlighting objects of interest in the game world. Is that a good system? Should this mechanic have been adapted into so many different games? What does it even do for a game? And how could you make it even better? In today's system review, we're gonna break down this detective vision. So, we've established that the trend started with Arkham Asylum. It probably existed in games before, like with thermal sights on guns or something like that, but Arkham Asylum made it one of the game's core mechanics. It has a whole button dedicated to it. When you're in detective mode, every nearby enemy is revealed to you, even ones in other rooms. It also points out armed enemies by painting them red. That knowledge is powerful. Imagine playing this game without it. Imagine walking into a combat encounter and not immediately knowing where every enemy is. Which sounds weird, right? Usually a question like that would be framed like, imagine if you walked in a combat encounter and could know where everyone is. But no, having full knowledge of the combat encounter is the default in Arkham Asylum. Compare it to a game like Dark Souls. That's not really a stealth game, but there's a lot of enemies lurking in corners to leap out at you when you least expect it. Imagine if their location was revealed to you at the press of a button. If you could enter Soul Vision or whatever and instantly discover if a chest was a mimic or not, there'd be no stakes. It's interesting that Arkham Asylum just doesn't care about hiding that information from you. Being all-knowing is the default. Which is fine. The difficulty is just shifted elsewhere in this game. Rather than being about finding where the enemies are, it's about planning the best route to take them out stealthily. That's what Detective Vision does in most games. It takes the difficulty out of finding the enemies and shifts it to how you deal with them. The new Hitman games feature their own Detective Vision called Instinct Mode. It works almost identically to how it works in Arkham Asylum, highlighting enemies and interactable items. Though the gameplay of Hitman relies a lot more on you picking up items in the environment than any Arkham game does. So while you be tracking enemies just like in Batman, you also have to be on the lookout for all kinds of little tiny objects. Weapons, keycards, throwable items, quest items, there's just so much more to notice. But it's all in service of giving you the tools to complete your mission the way you want. The stakes are a lot higher in Hitman than in Arkham Asylum. If you get spotted in Asylum, you can pretty easily beat the enemies in combat. Getting spotted in Hitman is a lot more difficult to recover from. You don't have a grappling hook as Agent 47. All you can do is mince away and hide in a bathroom. I don't know about you, but that puts a lot of pressure on me to make sure I'm prepared for any situation. I'm constantly toggling instinct mode to look for any and every object I can pick up. The only limit to Agent 47's carrying capacity are bigger weapons. You can carry as many screwdrivers and expired cans of spaghetti sauce as you want. And I hate to say it, but constantly toggling this mode on and off, it's kind of immersion breaking. I'm not really in the moment and scanning the environment myself. I'm letting the game highlight the interesting items for me. Do you know what I mean? It feels like a challenge is taken away from me. I don't have to waste my precious mental energy scanning every tabletop in here for useful items. I just press a button, and my eyes are automatically drawn to items that contrast against the dark background. I guess it's good for readability? Like, not every single item you see in this room is able to be picked up, so the game saves you time by highlighting what you actually can pick up. But it still feels cheap, like I'm giving up and saying, ugh, okay, just show me all the stuff I can pick up. Though something I actually like about this whole detective vision trope is that it's often an abstraction of the player character's expertise. In Hitman, Instinct Mode gives you an insight into, well, Agent 47's instincts. If a real person were in his place here, they might make a mental map of all the people around them based off information that's really hard to convey in a game. Smells. Sounds coming from real people rather than your TV speakers. And just an overall vibe, like when you can sense someone is standing behind you. Agent 47 can sense someone is in that room. In good implementations, it can feel like you're truly put into the character's head and get to see the world through their eyes. Another example of that is in Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. In Dragon Ball Z, it's stated that Goku and friends can sense a being's power. Some super strong villain will arrive on Earth, and Goku immediately notices their presence. In Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, you get a visualization of that sensation. When you look at NPCs through this game's version of Detective Vision, you can see their aura. And what's more, you can gauge how strong they are by how large their aura is. Unfortunately, it doesn't really do much for the game mechanically. It's more of an Easter egg than anything else. Most of the time when you enter this vision, you're looking for crafting materials or quest objectives. Regardless, that's another example of a game visualizing the player character's expertise. Now I want to talk about the main purpose of Detective Vision in games. Regardless of its specific implementation, it's almost always in service of making the game more readable. Let's go back to Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Enemies are highlighted in this mode, but you can also spot material gathering spots. Trees, groups of deer, mining spots, all things that give you items used in the game's crafting or cooking system. Take apples for instance. Where do you think you could get apples in this environment? Keep in mind, not every tree has apples. So how do you determine which trees have apples and which are just for decoration? You can't. At least not with the naked eye. If you enable Goku Vision, you can see some trees have glowy orbs in them. Is that satisfying? Honestly, I don't think so. It goes back to what I said about Instinct Mode in Hitman. You kinda shut your brain off when gathering materials like this. You don't have to diligently keep an eye out for apple trees in a sea of non-apple trees. You enable Goku Vision and see where they are. You beeline to the closest one, look for the next closest one, beeline it there, and repeat. It's mindless. I guess that leads into the next question of, so what? Which is a fair point. Gathering materials doesn't need to be a task that requires a lot of time investment. And with Hitman, the game is doing you a favor by pointing out the stuff you can interact with. It's saving you time. It comes down to developers picking and choosing their battles. DBZ Kakarot totally could have made material gathering much more involved than it currently is. But why do that in a game that's adapting the story from a series like Dragon Ball? It would distract from the main focus, which is fighting in intense battles with world-ending stakes. Being able to tell which trees have apples at a glance through Goku Vision is good enough for this game. Hitman is a little more complicated. It could be argued that finding the right tools in a level is part of the core experience of Hitman. There are paths and opportunities that open themselves to you with the use of certain items. So why would the game want to take away the difficulty of finding the right tools in the first place? It all comes back to readability. A big problem with games these days is that they're getting a lot more dense. Not in terms of content, but in terms of environmental design. Developers are able to add a ton more detail and clutter in their game than they could 15 years ago. And with all that clutter, it's more and more likely that useful items will get lost in the noise. Sure, the level designer will often try to make an object stand out by keeping the clutter away from where the object of interest is, but they can only do so much. Put not enough items on the table, and it doesn't look realistic. Put too many, and it's distracting. It's difficult to find a balance there. The developers are keenly aware that it's easy to miss an item or two in a big room. That's why they're highlighted in Instinct Mode. It immediately points out that this screwdriver right here isn't just for decoration. You can pick it up and fit it perfectly into the back of someone's head. Assassin's Creed Origins has a Detective Vision-like mode as well. It's not quite the same as Hitman or Batman, but it serves the same purpose. You hold up on the D-pad and interactable items are highlighted for you. During some quests, a quest marker will guide you to a general location, and your goal is to find the little interactables that progress the investigation. A lot of the time it's a crime scene, so you look for blood trails, murder weapons, and stuff that just doesn't seem right. So there's two ways to play these. Either you carefully inspect the environment for details that might be relevant to the investigation, or you just press up on the D-pad, and the interactable details are automatically pointed out. That takes the fun out of investigating for me. I'm just going to the golden Doritos that highlight the quest clues. It feels like I'm not engaging with the game in the way the developers want me to when I do that. I have some more to say about that later, but we should move on for now. With the pros and cons out of the way, I think it's time to ask the question, are these games better off with detective vision? All things being considered, I think they are. Being able to find points of interest in a dense environment is a useful tool the developers give you, though I can't help but feel it hinders my enjoyment in some games. In Hitman, I am constantly toggling instinct mode on and off to track targets and look for items. It breaks my immersion in that I so heavily rely on this system that doesn't match to anything in real life. I brought up earlier that instinct mode could be seen as an abstraction of Agent 47's expertise in how he's able to track targets in nearby rooms, but it's not a one-to-one match. Agent 47's good and all, but I don't think he'd be able to mentally track someone this far away. You, the player, has more knowledge about the situation than the character does. I don't think that little bit of dissonance is a bad thing. It's a good quality of life feature that you're able to see targets from so far away. It's just a tiny knock against the game's overall illusion of being a real world. With all that being said, I think it's great that these modes are included just for the sake of accessibility. You can turn off instinct mode in Hitman's options, and it's a much more oppressive game, not being able to see important items and enemies at a glance. I bet a sizable chunk of the game's players would find the game too difficult if instinct mode wasn't present. You might remember me complaining about Assassin's Creed Origins highlighting clues during investigation mode, and how I feel like I'm not getting the full enjoyment I could be. Why don't I just not highlight the clues? Why don't I look for the clues in the environment myself? It's an optional system, so anyone can choose not to use it. It's not a bad point, but whenever I'm confronted with a question like that, I always think back to a quote from Soren Johnson, one of the designers for some of the Civilization games. Given the opportunity, players will optimize the fun out of a game. He wrote an article in 2011 featuring that line. It's titled, Water Finds a Crack. The title is an internal phrase used within the Civilization team at the time. Water finding a crack refers to a player finding the most optimal solution to a problem and abusing it. He follows up with, the greatest danger is that once a player discovers such an exploit, they will never be able to play the game again without using it. The knowledge cannot be ignored or forgotten, even if the player wishes otherwise. He, of course, contextualizes that within the scope of Civilization 3, but it's applicable to any game. I know that the second I enter an investigation area, I can immediately hold up on the D-pad and instantly know what to interact with. I don't have to immerse myself in the world and think about where to look for clues. I can just treat it like I'm checking items off a checklist. I'm not engaging with the game. Sure, I could not do that and meet the game where it is. Treat this like an actual investigation rather than another step in a quest. But the temptation to just press that button and learn where everything is, it's too strong. And with Hitman, like I said, you can actually turn off instinct mode in the options. If you do that, the desire to press the bumper and use your Hitman vision is gone. Well, it's not gone, there's just a barrier put between you and it. You can very easily go back into the options and re-enable it whenever. That little barrier can be enough for some people. It's like the opposite of how Amazon gets you to spend more money on their site by making things purchasable with one click on the item's page. They know that the less barriers between you and some temptation leads to you being more likely to give into it. That's something I'd like to see more of in games. First, make your game playable without its detective vision equivalent. Then, add a toggle for it in the pause menu. Better yet, make it toggleable only from the main menu, so you can't enable and re-disable it during gameplay. That'd make me think twice about changing back. There is a balance to be had between a game like Arkham Asylum, where the game tells you everything, and Breath of the Wild, where the game tells you nothing. Honestly, Assassin's Creed Origins is a fair middle ground. Using the D-pad pulse doesn't enable God vision where you can see enemies. It just highlights interactable items. Compared to flicking on and off some God vision where you can see everyone and everything. All in all, I just think more options are appreciated. Check out my review of respecing in games if you want to hear me talk some more. That's another system I had some complex feelings about, and I think that video explored it pretty well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.